Hello, I'm Laura Furiosi, divorced mother of 3, and I'm here with my mother, Lynette Galvin, with 35 years' experience in family law. You're listening to the Divorce Course podcast. Through our candid discussions, we hope to help you through your divorce or de facto separation. We will be answering the most commonly asked questions and covering the stages and steps that you will face on your way to freedom. We are always told about the things you should do in divorce, but this episode in particular is about the things you should not do in divorce. We have come up with the top 5 things that lawyers, particularly my mum, Lynn Galvin, as a lawyer, wish all her clients knew about. And we're going to share these tips with you on the 5 things that you shouldn't do in divorce. Hello, Mum. Welcome.
Hello, Laura. Hello, everyone.
Thanks for coming along. We're really excited because for the first time ever, we are also doing this live through TikTok. Hopefully this works. If not, if it doesn't work, so be it. But the problem with doing it live on TikTok is we don't get to edit, which is really hard. But anyway, we'll give it our best shot.
The dogs don't bark.
So, Mum, the 5 don'ts that you would wish your clients knew when going through divorce, and the number 1 first top tip for don'ts is
don't take your ex's word for what you're entitled to. That's often when you discuss separating, if you're discussing it with your ex, they'll often tell you something like you won't be getting any of the super, or I'm going to get 70% of the property, or something like that. Don't take their word for it. It's very hard when you've been a couple for so long, if you've been together, and especially if you've got kids together, to make sort of joint decisions and think about yourselves as a couple. But this is time now for you to think about yourself as you, and treat your ex-partner as just someone that you know, but you need to go and get your own legal advice. The number of times people have come into me through my career and they've already spent a few months basically spinning their wheels about what they're entitled to, and are absolutely astounded when they find out what the true entitlement is. So you need to get legal advice. You can be pretty sure if your ex is telling you what's what, they've had some legal advice, and often they didn't like that advice. So they'll say things like, let's not involve lawyers. Don't go to the lawyer. So, that's my number 1 top tip.
And I guess it is really hard if you've been married, maybe you've been together for 15 years or 20 years or 100 years. Hopefully that's not the case. But, and of course you're still in that mindset of, well, we're a team. Maybe, if it's not high conflict or manipulative and controlling, and it's just, you're just separating because it's not working out, you think, maybe I can trust them. But unfortunately, when it comes down to it, you can't have each other's best interest at heart anymore, because you are literally going separate ways, and you just need to know where you stand legally. And there's so many listeners that we've got that write in and say, I wish I had. We did a TikTok the other day about our divorce limbo episode, and people said, we said we were going to do it ourselves. Turns out he just said that because he didn't want me to know what I was legally entitled to, and now it's too late. So it is the big number 1, don't take their word for it. Doesn't mean you don't love them. Doesn't mean you're a sneaky person if you go and see a lawyer. It just means you're treating your divorce in a business-like manner.
Yes, you're consciously uncoupling and preparing for your new life. So it's all about you, not about you as a couple. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. All right.
That's number 1.
That's like an emotional barrier people need to get over, and it is one we ram through in every episode. Go and see a lawyer just for 20 minutes, a free chat. Go and just see where you stand. Don't take their word for it, because they're not going to have your best interest at heart, no matter how much you think they are nice to you. Number 2, big no-no in divorce, and that is what?
Don't be guilted into taking less than you should. Some people, maybe they've been unfaithful in the relationship, or the other person's got a mental health problem, or they just make you feel bad. If you're an empathetic person and the other person's not empathetic, they may be manipulating and controlling you into taking less than you should. I think you need to say to yourself, am I going to be okay in 2 or 4 years when I take this? Am I going to be upset and feel ripped off if I take less? And guilt doesn't have any role to play in Australian law. In Australian family law, the court doesn't care who did what.
What about in any other country? Is there guilt
I
in other
think
countries?
there might be still in some countries, but not in the UK,
Really?
not in Ireland anymore. Yeah. And we got rid of the Matrimonial Causes Act in 1975 in Australia. So before that, yes, there was guilt. And, you know, you see those old movies where people take photos of people having affairs so they can get a divorce. That's not going to happen here. So you need to you need to honour your future self and just try and put yourself in that headspace. If you think you might give in and take less than you should, I suggest you go out and have a look at some homes, open houses, or realistically look at where you might be living, what you need, and also do a realistic budget and see if you can manage, because I think often you can't. And again, I think go and talk to a lawyer. So if you do end up giving up something just to sort of save litigation or the emotional trauma, at least you know how much you're giving up. Yeah.
And I guess that it is that guilt a lot of people have in the beginning.
Yeah.
But you've got to think about you and your life in 10 years from now.
Yeah.
Yes, you may have felt guilty about taking, maybe it was an extra 10 grand, maybe it was an extra 50,000, who knows. But are you going to feel guilty in 10 years, or are you going to regret that you didn't get what you were entitled to? Because you're going to look back and go, damn, I really wish I had got what I was entitled to, maybe for the kids to help them with their education in the future, or your car might break down, and you're going to look back and go, I really wish I didn't feel guilty because I'm entitled to it and I need to get over that barrier.
And if you, one of the common things that we find is that you feel guilty because you think it was you and that you're the one leaving and the other person seems to be blameless. But then a year down the track, you find out some things and you go, gosh, darn it, I've been scammed. So,
Yeah, that's true. So you've got that opportunity. Maybe they're just scamming you, sweet talking you, so you don't get what you're entitled to. Or maybe you just haven't thought about your future self. You literally have to take yourself out of the situation you're in and put yourself in the shoes of the future you and go, what is it that I need?
Be your future you's best friend. What would you say to a friend of yours now if they were thinking of taking that deal? You know, wouldn't you be saying, oh, mate, you need to really think about that. Yeah.
Yes. And also your children. I think a lot of people, like for child support and, you know, property settlement, they feel guilty about asking for child support, or they feel guilty about asking for money, but your kids won't feel guilty. No. Your kids will want to have the right provided. So it's not just about you, it's also about your children. Yes. So if you can't get over the guilt, think, what would my daughter ask me? You know, or my son ask me, if they later ask me, can I get new shoes?
Can I go to camp? And you go, oh, I'm not sure this year, or you've already done this. And so think about that. There's a reason the Child Support Act exists, and the Child Support Agency is that independent broker so that you don't make a bad deal on behalf of your children. You're there, if you've got children, you're kind of their trustee. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that leads us to the first two don'ts in getting divorced or separated, and that is don't take their word for it, go find out. And the other one is don't feel guilty. You are entitled to it. There's a reason it's created that way, and your future self and your children in the future will thank you for not feeling guilty and getting what you're entitled to. What's number 3, Mum? What's the number 3 don't that you wished your clients didn't do?
Okay, so this is kind of chronologically following on. Don't sign any consent orders. In Australia, you can finalise children and property by consent orders. Don't sign any of them without going and getting some advice on the actual orders themselves before you sign it. Okay. So if you have a binding financial agreement, people would have heard it, it's called a financial agreement now, or a child support agreement or a binding child support agreement. Often they require a solicitor to give a certificate, but consent orders don't have that requirement. You could, I've had a client who signed her consent orders in front of her husband on the bonnet of the car outside the news agency. And without thinking, they may, someone like a woman, for instance, may say, unless you sign these orders, I'm not going to let you have the kids for the weekend, or so don't be bullied into that. Don't be pressured into that, and go and see someone and say, do these orders say what I think they say? because, they might not, you might think in your heart you know what they mean, but what would the court say about them? And secondly, am I doing the right thing? Am I giving rights away? And if so, what am I giving away? And then you can make a decision. So, because they're binding. Consent orders are binding. They get filed in the court, and the only way you can change them is with property orders, particularly. You have to get special leave to reopen, and it's hardly ever given in the courts. The courts have the view that once you have your property settlement, that's it. So you're committing, again, like you say, what you said, for your future self. So get them checked. Yeah. But particularly consent orders relating to kids seem a lot more straightforward to people, people look at it and go, oh, well, you don't have to be legally trained to understand who's dropping off, who's picking up, what are we doing this. But a lawyer, if you go and see someone, they will have all the whatabouts, what ifs, what if Father's Day, what if Easter is not during the holidays, what if, I don't know, but just they might raise the things that you might have forgotten to put in, or they might not. There might be a little line in there that isn't what you intend, but has big unintended consequences, and you can't just reopen children's matters willy-nilly.
So you've got signing your consent orders, make sure you get someone, you talk to someone about it before you do it. The thing I wanted to ask you about consent orders and before you sign it, you've always told me whenever I bought a house to do a walkthrough and imagine me living in the house and walking through it and where I put my shopping, where would the kids sleep, doing all of that. So when it comes to consent orders with children in particular, is that kind of the same thing people should be doing?
I give such good advice, don't I, Laura, to you?
You do.
Yes. So that's what you do. Imagine it, think it through. Okay, so what if I'm supposed to hand the children over on Boxing Day? What if we're going on holidays? Or does that mean I can never go and see my mother in Melbourne on Christmas? Things like that. You need to be able to just think it through. You might have some resistance on the other side in terms of negotiation. You might not be able to get everything you want, but there might be some unintended consequences. And you might be able to say, for instance, using that example, you might be able to say to your ex, well, don't you occasionally want to take the kids out to visit your mum in Rocky or up to Rocky? So, we can do that in alternate years or something. So, yes. And there's nothing that you can think of that can't be put in an order about that, just with the right wording. And lawyers have that in our heads. We know how to write that down so that it's enforceable, easy to read, and it covers everything that you want. Yeah.
Okay, so go and see a lawyer. Number 3, do not go and sign consent orders for property or children's matters unless you've seen someone who can check it through. Because, like you said, there's little word bombs in there that could mean something that you don't understand. Yep. So, there's lives with in Australia, they write that, which has big connotations. I guess parental responsibility has big connotations. Yes. There's sole and joint. You don't want to be accidentally tricked out of that with just a simple piece of wording. So don't do what one of Mum's clients has done in the past. Was it a client that signed it on a Ford?
On the bonnet of the car.
Don't sign consent orders on the bonnet of the car.
They'd given it to their ex-partner who had filed it in the court. And although you can appeal a consent order technically within 28 days, she didn't come and see me till much after. And it was one of those word bombs, Laura, that she didn't realise was in there. A classic is that I've seen a consent order signed where it said that the mother will see the children, the children will be in the mother's care at all such times as agreed between the parties, full stop. And then, of course, the other party never agreed and they weren't in breach of the order because that was all it said. And that person thought it was amicable. If you've got a situation like that in Australia, guys, why bother with an order? Just don't bother with an order. And that way you're keeping your options open because that case of Rice and Aspelin in Australia means you can't go back to court, usually unless there's a big change in circumstances. So
before you sign those orders, it's not like you can add things into a consent order later.
You can put it in a parenting plan, I guess, later on, but it's a good time to just put it in while everything's running smoothly.
Okay, all right. So we've got don't take their word for it. Don't feel guilty about taking what's you're entitled to in a property settlement or children's matters. And then don't sign anything without getting some legal advice or doing some serious deep thinking about it. Number 4, Mum. What is the number 4 don't in divorce? Would you like us to take away the overwhelm of the divorce process and give you the step-by-step guide on what to do at each part of the process and show you how to do it? Even giving you the correct wording and legal templates that you can use for your property or parenting agreement? Would you like us to show you how to do your own negotiations and mediations and keep it out of court? Well, then you're invited to the DIY Divorce Blueprint. It is the only training of its kind that shows you exactly how you can do your own divorce, property and children's settlements, mediations and negotiations so that you can finally move on with your life without having to spend thousands of dollars on lawyers and years in limbo. Go to www.thedivorcecourse.com.au/enroll to find out more today. Join us now. Number 4, Mum. What is the number 4 don't in divorce?
This is a bit sad, but it's don't expect your ex's family to really be on your side or even to be neutral. It's almost impossible, I think. Some wonderful people do stay neutral. The grandparents walk a line and it's usually about grandchildren. But if that happens, that's wonderful for you. But be prepared that it might not happen and then you won't get so hurt. And understand that even if you've had a lovely relationship with them, it's that old saying about blood being thicker than water. And if you think about it, your parents have probably gone off your ex as well. So, I know families where the partner was so awful that it's the partner's parents that my clients miss the most. And look, over time, that relationship heals, particularly while everything's up in the air. They'll probably stay out of it and be neutral, if not turn against you, I guess. So, yeah, just don't be saying things to them or to your ex-sister-in-law, brother-in-law that you don't want filtering back to your ex.
We had a listener who wrote in and said that she couldn't afford to see a lawyer, so her ex-husband's sister was going to take her to see a lawyer. And I was like, oh, I don't know if that's a good idea. What would you say to someone who was doing that?
Just don't. Just don't. They're torn, I guess, allegiances, yes. And so they're going to be, no matter what their good intentions are, what if your lawyer gives you some advice that really should just be for you and they've taken it back to your ex because they feel they must? Any good lawyer will probably make you leave your sister-in-law out in the waiting room. Yeah. But, you know, just don't do it because they're torn loyalties and they might not feel it at that moment, but something might happen. Like particularly, you know, if you're being amicable because you're guilty or whatever and you're giving in to your ex-partner, their family might think, good for you, you're really great. But when you start to get on a more neutral business-like basis, they might go, how could you? How could you do that to X? And then
or when you get a new partner.
Absolutely, yes, that's right.
Yes,
and then you've left like a leak where your private legal advice is going to be fed back to your ex. So, yeah, don't do it.
I guess that also covers, I know families, and it's interesting because you're a family lawyer that is a big don't because you must see it a lot for it to come up in your top 5 don'ts to rely on other families, but their side of the family. And look, all to you if you have a great relationship with your ex's parents and brothers and sisters or whatever, that's fantastic. But you've got to keep your divorce business-like.
Yes.
Because it is business that you're doing. You are settling money. You are sorting out assets. It's not kumbaya, let's hold hands and sing a song. You can do that after if it doesn't go right, you know. And that's great for the children to have that great relationship with all the grandparents and fantastic. But please don't stuff up everything because you felt bad about not being,
not being in their family
with your ex-mother-in-law. Yeah. And I know it could be hard. I guess sometimes, like you said, Mum, breaking up for some of our listeners, they said breaking up with their ex. Family. The hardest part was the family or the traditions or the going to visit. So I get that. But I think it's a cautionary tale also to remember divided allegiances during divorce also can include accountants and financial planners.
You are so right. You can't. I don't. Are you familiar with the phrase that no dog can have two masters?
Yes.
Okay, and also axe to grind. I always wonder if your generation knows that. But yes, you need your own legal advice, and you need your own accountant, and you need your own financial planner. Just like you wouldn't trust your ex, like my top one, don't listen to your ex about what you're entitled to. Well, how do you know that the accountants haven't got a slightly different agenda? So you need someone on Team You that can do that for you. And with family, be careful sometimes. If you find your ex's parents are all over you and all supportive of you, A, it could be a ruse, it could be a trick. But B, they may actually have an axe to grind against your partner. And it's not because your ex-partner, not because they love you so much. It's just because they're happy to stick it to their wayward son or daughter, which is just a bad basis for anything. So, you want to cut that negativity out. Like you say, leave it for as long as you like. And then, if once the dust is settled and everything's in more routine, you can have a more collegiate relationship with that family.
It's like you might have to go and get yourself a new financial planner, because I have found out from Pedro, one of our financial planners that I've talked on the podcast before, I don't think you're actually allowed to represent two parties, if they're separated or during divorce. So definitely make sure you go and see a different financial planner, or get them to. Yes. But I would go and see a new one. Yes. And same with the accountant. You might have, like, I know a lot of people go to barbecues with their accountants and parties, but you just gotta just for the business process of separating everything, you got to move it out. And one of the TikTok live watchers has just said, I'm acting like the CEO of a big company who has to make tough decisions. I took your advice. So well done.
Good job.
Well done, you. Yeah. That's fantastic. Someone's listening to your advice. Isn't that great?
Lovely. I don't often get feedback in real time.
Yeah.
Well done.
So we've got, don't take their word for it. Don't feel guilty. Don't sign anything without seeing somebody, and don't rely on their side of the family or tell them anything or involve them in it, because really in the end they probably can't have your best interest at heart. No. But you can still be friends with the family later. Yeah. I think what's number 5?
Well, number 5 is
don't do in divorce.
Don't move out of the house without talking to a lawyer first. Okay, unless it's really safer for you to leave, in which case run like hell, and then we'll sort that out later. So in Australia, there's a thing called sole occupancy, and the court can make an order that one person live in the house. And they don't usually make an order like they did in the old days, that both of you could continue to live in the house even if you're at daggers drawn sort of thing. But be careful, because the court may decide it's you that has to move, not the other person. So go and see a lawyer. Generally, if you have to leave the house, if there's DV or just for your own sanity, that doesn't mean you lose your rights to your house. I'm talking about people who own the houses here. You can still, even if the other person's been living in it since separation, the court often can and does award it to the person who's been out of the house for the time. So some people kind of set up like a squatting thing in there. I'm not leaving the house. And if you need to separate, it might have to be you that goes in the short term, but you're not giving up too much. So the only drawback with someone else staying in the house, but you've got to weigh it up. You've got to weigh safety, sanity, and best interest of the children. It's terrible for them to see people fighting. If they won't move out and they have to stay in there, you're probably dealing with an avoidant person or a high conflict person. The issue often happens with that. If the house has to be sold anyway, there's no point hanging on to it, staying there. You might as well go and start your new life. But if it has to be sold and you've got a particularly vindictive or emotionally upset person in the house, or an avoidant or depressed or whatever, or just nasty, they may not keep the house nice for sale. So, or they just might not. Avoidant people often just can't bring themselves to it. They can't move out and all of that. That's the only drawback. But there's nothing that they can do that hasn't been done before and is dealt with by the Australian family courts quite efficiently.
But if people want to stay out of court, They don't want to go to court. They want to do this. They see a lawyer, though, to make sure they know what they're getting is fair, but stay out of court, maybe do mediation, consent orders, property agreement. Before you move out, you've got to think to yourself, what is the divorce personality type that my ex has and that I have? And we've done our first ever podcast episode covers it, and our course covers it.
Yes.
If they're avoidant and you move out of the house, like you've said, Mum, the potential is that they just might not ever get it ready for sale. And if you move out, you're going to be in a bit of trouble if they just refuse to clean up for open house, or they refuse to fix up the front fence that's broken, which may cost money in the sale of the house.
Oh, you will. You'll lose money. And the courts almost never make an order that a person undertakes certain positive actions to sell the house. They're not going to let you, they will order you to do all acts and things to sell the house, and the registrar of the court in Australia can sign the contract, can sign the transfer documents. But, but the thing is, you will lose money if the person is going to trash the joint and not mow the lawn. That's the problem. Yeah.
And then I guess, so think about that if you've got an avoidance. So that's the type of person who's just like doesn't want to deal with divorce, doesn't want to even focus on it, just ignores it, doesn't respond to your emails about it, doesn't talk about how to split property. But then you've got the high conflict.
Yes.
If you move out of the house and you have a high conflict person, can you rely on them to do it? It's probably, if you're in it and they move out, they're probably going to be angry with the way you do things.
Yes.
So you need to think about that as well, I guess, and play it out in your mind. How is this going to work? Is it going to be less resistance if I let them get the house ready?
Yes.
Or is it going to be less resistance if I get the house ready?
And another one for that is sometimes if you're going to get a bigger percentage of the property pool, if it's been decided you're going to get maybe 70% and the other person's going to get 30%, they don't have a big incentive to sell for the top price because, they're only losing a little bit. Sorry about my dog. But, so if you've got a high conflict person in there, they can literally try to scuttle the deal. In fact, some people would rather lose money on a sale than give you more money. So,
I mean, we've got listeners who their ex-partner trashed the house before the sale.
Yes.
So, or we've got other members in our divorce course membership where the partner won't get out of the house.
Right.
And
you can get an order.
it.
You can get orders. It's called an ouster order, but it's a lot of drama. So, think about it. And be careful you're not the avoidant one. You might think, do you know what, it's easier if I just go. So think about that and have that hard conversation if it's safe to do so with your ex.
Yes, of course. And if it is not safe, the first thing you should do is leave. Call 1-800-RESPECT, make a safety plan. Yes. Definitely plan the way that you're going to leave in a safe manner, but call 1-800-RESPECT. Or if you're in another country, of course, check out the domestic violence support phone calls, and you can make them or go online, and they have a quick exit button so it can't be seen in case someone's looking at it for you. Yes. So, Mum, going back, so we've got the 5 things that you should never do in divorce that Mum has seen in her family law experience that is really not great for you. And they are, don't take their word for it. Don't sign anything until you've seen a lawyer. Don't feel guilty. No. And don't rely on their family. And the house one, in your words, Mum?
Is don't move out of the house without legal advice, really, unless it's not safe to do so. Oh, and another thing, Laura, is that a lot of people are very attached to their things. And it's hard to do a safety plan and escape with all of your stuff. So you might want to think about quietly moving some of the less obtrusive stuff to a friend's place. If it comes to a crunch and you have to leave without it, just remember it's just stuff. You can take some videos of it, and the furniture and everything's secondhand anyway. I think, years and years ago, back in the 80s, I remember a lady, she'd been planning to leave. But in the end, it was her and 2 kids in their pajamas running down the street, and she never went back, and it disappeared. Her music, her sewing, all the stuff that she loved, and her 21st birthday presents.
I'm sure her and her children were safe.
They were quite safe.
And one of the TikTok watchers is saying, be prepared to leave all physical things. So as long as you've got that safety plan and an action plan to enact, again, like you said, everything else can be replaced. Yes. Lives can't be. If you are interested, if you are at a phase where you're thinking about leaving, we do have some podcast episodes, number 1, 2, 3, 4, you can go and listen to. And we also have a checklist that you can download for free. Yep. To tell you the things that you should take photos of for your property settlement, because sometimes in a high conflict or manipulative controlling, you'll move out, you'll do a runner, and then you will never find out the information you need to help you get your property settlement without lots of court
drama.
You'll
go, what about that, antique vase? And they'll go, what antique vase? There was never an antique vase. Or where's
also, what about your superannuation that you've got 500,000 in? And they'll go, what superannuation? Or, what about your job? All the information, there is a checklist. You can download it for free. Just go to the www.thedivorcecourse.com.au and you click on the before you go checklist. And of course, again, that is just for the financial property side of things. Please make sure if you're in a domestic violence situation, you go and get your own safety plan sorted. And of course, you can call 1-800-RESPECT in Australia. Yes. Now, Mum, thank you so much for that.
Welcome, Laura. How did we go?
I don't know. It was our first ever podcast episode live on TikTok that I'm going to have to go and edit significantly.
Extra pressure.
But it was nice to have some listeners on with us as well. And so thank you, Rosie and Karchik and Songs to Prito. They've been writing some great stuff. Go to our website, www.thedivorcecourse.com.au, and we've got so many resources that you can jump onto. And also we're always doing live webinars if you're interested about property settlement, property agreements, children's matters, etc. So you can register for one of our live webinars.
And also don't forget we've got our course that people can buy.
Yes. And also we have started doing some really easy, simple to follow videos on how to fill in court documents if you're interested.
You're in Australia. They're very good, I think, Laura.
Mum talks you through how to fill in each question because they're confusing as. Yes. So thank you, Mum, for doing that. And a lot of people have been using that recently.
Oh,
that's right. So thank you, everybody, for watching, and thank you, everybody, for listening, and thank you, Mum, for your time.
Oh, thank you, Laura. Bye, everyone.
If you found this podcast helpful, we'd love it if you could rate, review, and subscribe. By doing so, you are spreading the word to help someone else just like you. Lynn would like to remind you that this podcast is general advice only, and you should always get legal advice in relation to your particular situation. And remember that the Australian laws may have changed since recording.